What is up, team? Welcome back to the Red Storm Rap Reaction Podcast. I'm Pat Kane, and St. John's just made the best decision they've made, well, in my whole lifetime, I'd say, at least the last 23 years, going back to 2000. And they hired the Hall of Fame coach, the legendary, the one and only Rick Pitino. Cole, thank you for joining me once again. I know it's been a whirlwind. One of the most exciting days I can remember as a St. John's fan. Exciting last few days. Kept us on pins and needles. You know, it's not easy for St. John's fans to ever sit idly and wait for good news.
Never is.
You know, with our past history of just the other shoe always seeming to drop. But thankfully, the stars aligned. Father Shanley, Mike Craig, St. John's, they got out there. They beat the other team to the punch, and they got their man. Rick Pitino coming to St. John's to hopefully take us back to places perhaps we've never been before. Cole, what are your thoughts today?
Dude, I'm pretty sure I'm still sleeping or I died and went to heaven. Can somebody please come pinch me and wake me up? We just got, Pat, what do you think? A top 10 coach in the history of college basketball?
You could make an argument there's not 10 better. I mean, you could make an argument he's on that top 5 and there'd only be 1 or 2 ahead of him. You know, like Louis said in that interview he did, you know, they're not going to take Naismith out of the grave. You know, you might as well go get Rick Pitino.
I dug up an old Jim Boeheim post-game interview where just after Louisville had fired Rick and Syracuse had just played Louisville, and Jim said, he was asked about Pitino. Jim said he thought Rick was the second best coach in the history of college basketball in the modern era after John Wooden, only behind Mike Krzyzewski. I mean, that's the type of guy. And when you get that type of guy to your program, I'm in such a celebratory mood. I'm feeling like a little parched. Hopefully you don't mind, just get a little drink there.
Please. I think
it's
celebrating.
It's a champagne.
It's time for a celebration.
Our program has completely changed course. Rick Pitino is the best thing that could have possibly happened. There was no other option. Obviously, Father Shanley was dead set on changing the culture at St. John's and taking us back to our winning ways. I mean, you look at what Pitino's done in his history, back to his time at Providence. In 2 years or 3 years that he was there, gets them to a Final Four. Kentucky, as soon as he's hired, I think within 4 years, gets them to a Final Four. Louisville, same thing. 4 years after being hired, gets them to a Final Four. I like you said in your intro, I don't think it's unrealistic to hope for or expect Rick Pitino to potentially get us farther than we've ever been. And we know what that is, 1985 in the Final Four. He could potentially take us farther than that.
Yep, and it's the best bet we could have took. There's no way another school could top this hire, save for less. I don't know. Bill Self went to some other school besides Kansas. There's not a bigger splash that could happen. And it's, like you said, maybe we'll go to places we've never been before. I mean, you know, if Rick Pitino doesn't bring St. John's to a Final Four, trust me, that's not the only place that we could gauge this as a success. But it's at least a possibility St. John's fans can look towards. And at the very least, the excitement, the buzz, the mentions, the media pundits, they will be talking about St. John's as much as any team from here into the start of next season. You can guarantee on any coaching carousel, any preseason outlook, any type of summer wrap-up, off-season type of edition, St. John's is going to be, you know, front and center in all this discourse. And as a college basketball team, that's what you want to be. You want to be part of the conversation. You want to be on, you know, the fingertips of every media personality out there. And Rick Pitino is one of those guys, no matter where you land in the basketball spectrum, young, old, NBA, college, you never had to be a Louisville, Kentucky, or Providence fan. You know who Rick Pitino is, and most importantly, you respect him. You saw the outpouring of love from former St. John's fans, the excitement with this hire. I saw Harkless, I saw Harrison, I saw Phil Green, just to name a few that just jumped. Amir Garrett, a lot of those Lavin guys. Maybe it's something with Lavin. But just the excitement to recognize St. John's made the right decision, and it's only up from here. I can't express enough how excited I am. My bracket is ripped to shreds. I couldn't care less right now. It's all about St. John's, Rick Pitino, and what he's going to do the next 5 months or 6 months leading up to the preseason.
24 hours. Brandon Tierney had the great quote on his show when they first started talking about this a week ago, where he said St. John's could be ranked 5 hours after Rick Pitino is hired, because watch what he will do in the transfer portal immediately. I mean, we're talking about levels of players that we haven't seen come through the store in quite some time. And dude, we can talk all day long about Pitino's success on the court and what he'll mean for us as a coach, which, I can't be more excited about. But as you alluded to when we first started off, I really want to be thankful for the job that Father Shanley did, that Mike Craig did, and then looking at what they can do with Pitino going forward, not only as a basketball coach, but from a fundraising perspective. I mean, that's what Mike Craig excels at, coming from Duke, putting together that legacy fund that I think raised over $100 million just for the men's basketball team at Duke. Like, everyone you hear talk about Craig is, oh, like, he does a great job fundraising.
Yeah,
does a great job with game day experience and modernizing this program. And then you look at what Pitino has done at every step of his place, but then especially what's said about his time at Iona. As he walked in there, their facility sucked. He knew he needed to upgrade that, and he took it upon himself to go to the boosters and get money, and he was able to do that and improve their stats. What are they going to be able to do with a president who actually gives a shit about this basketball program, with an AD who knows 100% how to raise funds and what he needs to do and the vision that he has for this program, and now one of the best coaches in the history of the game, who also just happens to like really know that we need the best facilities and able to go get them and raise that money himself. It's unbelievable, the team that we now have to run this program for the next 6, 7, 8 years. It couldn't be out.
I mean, yeah, it's easy to think of the possibilities, and like you said, it's the commitment to it that is so exciting. St. John's has seemed so long to be content with being little sisters of the poor, just hanging around, being affiliated with the Big East, but not making our way towards the top and settling for the next best thing. And with Father Shanley, Mike Craig, and now Rick Pitino, Rick Pitino will not settle for anything less than excellence. He's going to demand that, demand all the arrows in the quiver, if you will, to be able to go out there and recruit the best players in the country and compete at the highest level. And looking at the Big East, the other news today was Cooley, obviously the second biggest news in the Big East today. Cooley leaves Providence for Georgetown. So the Big East doesn't lose a coach. They just transfer a coach from another area, and they pick up one of the best coaches of all time, Rick Pitino, and they have 3 other teams in the Sweet 16. So the Big East news has been hot in the press, and it's just great attention for this conference who, once football comes around in the fall, you stop hearing about the Big East for a few months, and any attention they can get is great. And I continue to say, if you are a college basketball fan, there's no other place to be than the Big East. I mean, it is through and through what college basketball is about. Of course, I'm biased being a St. John's fan. Of course, I'm biased being from New York. But there's nothing like watching these basketball-centric teams go out there and compete on the biggest stage in the tournament. In these last 25 years, I've been hoping and praying we could be alongside those guys doing the same thing. And now it just does not seem like a dream or a far-fetched idea anymore. It seems like a reality.
And I've said it sort of since this new Big East came together, like every single year, 1 through 10, now 1 through 11, there is no better conference top to bottom. And at some points, especially going into March Madness, like that affects us negatively because we have a lower team like DePaul who like gets upsets over teams and sort of negatively affects the higher team seedings. But it's so exciting to just have that round robin format of a conference and to have these unbelievable coaches in this conference. Shaka Smart, Sean Miller, it goes on and on.
I know.
Danny Early, now Rick Pitino. It's so exciting, and
I saw a headline. I forget if it was on Twitter or St. John's board just recently, just ranked the Big East coaches, and before I even looked at the list, I got excited because I know. I mean, you can't put Rick any lower than, I don't know, maybe you could say you'd rather take Sean Miller for the next 10 years over Rick Pitino right now. But other than that, you really can't come to me with a legitimate argument telling me you're taking anybody else over Rick Pitino. And still,
not when you're saying, like you said, maybe you're looking at, he's a younger guy. But when you just say, I need a game tomorrow and I need the coach, it's Rick Pitino.
So. Yeah. And you mentioned, I think you said it was Brandon Tierney who said next year they got a chance to be ranked within the next few months. Jeff Goodman, for everything he says that's so negative towards St. John's. And, boy, do I hate that guy 90% of the time. But he said similar things. He was, he's going to put, regardless of who's on the roster, regardless who sticks around, regardless of knowing who he's going to go after in the transfer portal, he would put St. John's as the 25th best team in the country heading in the next year, knowing who's at the helm. And that's just the kind of respect, the gravitas, the type of attention that Pitino commands. I guess we can transfer to talking about, if you were Rick Pitino, and Rick Pitino is going to hit the ground running, he's going to want to try to make a splash right away. St. John's roster seemed pretty capable last year. We all kind of thought we underachieved with the talent we had. Since the season ended, there's been zero news in terms of departures. Everyone's kind of stood pat and waited for this decision to come.
Kudos to the kids. I don't know how the administration sold them on that.
Yeah,
saying, hey, Rick Pitino's coming, but like
kudos to the administration. Kudos to Van, who supposedly has been taking care of the fort during this time. And if you're Rick Pitino, first, before I even take out any of these theoretical questions, I want to be clear. I am team Rick Pitino decides 100%. I'll let him choose the roster, the staff, who he goes after, who he wants to keep. 100% going to let the Hall of Famer decide that stuff. But if we're just going to put theoreticals out there, hypotheticals out there, Cole, if you were Rick Pitino, knowing St. John's as well as you did, what's the first phone call you make in terms of players on the roster?
Again, totally comes down to the type of team Rick Pitino wants to have in the roster construction that he wants. I would think, just on how team players played last year, like your first call is to Joel Soriano and see if he wants to use that extra year of eligibility that he has. After that, it's probably Posh, I would assume. But again, AJ Storr, Brendan Gardner, make sure he still wants to stay committed to the university. But to think that anybody isn't irreplaceable, I mean, Rick Pitino, again, like we talked about earlier, the type of player that he can get to come in through these doors now, we're talking about 5-star level kids that will want to come play for a guy who is one of the greatest coaches of all time and a guy who is known for his player development. And if that was community, I just said, I don't understand how these kids didn't transfer out after Anderson left and they just sat here in limbo. If they were told, like, hey, Rick Pitino is probably going to be the guy that's going to come in, then I 100% understand why none of these kids transferred out, because every single one of them wants to play for Rick Pitino.
Yeah, they were smart to wait around and figure that out. And if they decide that it's not a perfect fit, then I wish those guys good luck.
Absolutely.
I don't want to make this into a sending guys off, because it's not. I would love for the top 6 or 7 guys from last year's roster to stick around. I'd love for the 3 recruits to stay committed, and then have those 3 maybe spots to fill, and have Rick do what he thinks is best for the program.
Who's your first phone call?
Okay, if I had to just choose one, my first phone call would be to AJ Storr. I think with his tutelage and his experience getting guys his size and athleticism into the NBA, his ability to get 3-point looks for his team, whether off transition looks or just guards getting into the paint or drawing up a beautiful play. You look at Terrence Williams, you look at Earl Clark, you look at Francisco Garcia, just to name a few guys from Louisville, versatile wings who could score. Those guys play defense. And if you could take his offensive ability and transfer that physical skills that he got out of those 3 guys and made them, dual threats, I think, AJ Storr has the capabilities, the talent to be an All-American. And that's no matter where he's playing. But if you're going to make a choice about, 1, where you're comfortable at, you got a year on your belt in New York, and 2, who you want to learn from, St. John's can make as good as a case as anybody right now that you're already in the best place possible. That's not to say that your choice of Soriano isn't right there, and Posh as well. If there's anybody who deserves to see success at St. John's, it's Posh. And if there's anybody who proved last year that they're willing to put the work in to get better, it's Soriano. And there's only going to be, I don't know, will there be another person coming back to college basketball next season that average a double-double? I don't know if there will be. Edie's got another year, but who knows if he'll stick around. So you give, if those 3 guys come back, and you know how I feel about Dylan Wasu, I want that guy to stick on St. John's and be a super role player. Hopefully not as featured of a role, but a super part of a good basketball team. I'd love to see it. But if you have Soriano, Storr, and Posh to build around and have some familiarity with, and you build around those guys, and perhaps Pitino could redeem David Jones and get him to play more of a controlled approach. There you go. Knowing when a good shot is the best, or when the shot is good enough to take, as opposed to forcing up an okay shot. There's definitely some redeemable qualities there, as well as we know Pinzon and Curbelo. So it's just going to be a whirlwind. It's just going to be exciting. But I just want to say again, whatever he decides to do, I'm fine with.
I was just looking up. Yep. I was looking up, thinking of like Pitino's player development stuff. And I was thinking about that Louisville national championship team.
It happened. He got a tattoo.
Russ Smith was a 3-star guard coming into Louisville, ranked 282 in the nation. And I think he finished his career as an All-American.
Yeah, he did finish his career as a first-team All-American.
I mean, can you imagine Posh or Wuzu under his tutelage? Like how they could develop their game? Could you imagine?
And almost equally as important to that, and just to say, Russ Smith was from New York, and I'm pretty sure he spurned St. John's and Norm Roberts. His backcourt partner, Peyton Siva, was not a shooting threat whatsoever. He was a defensive ball hound, get in the paint, make plays happen. And, you know, if that doesn't sound like Posh Alexander, well, you haven't been watching St. John's basketball. So I would look more towards his ability to get the best out of Peyton Siva, and hopefully that could translate to what he could do with Posh, or Curbelo too. Let's not, you know, like we've all kind of thought once the way the season ended, we saw the last of Curbelo. Who knows? He did retweet the announcement that Pitino was back after retweeting a Speedy Claxton video of him hugging his player. So who knows what he's thinking, but he's a talented kid, you know, and Rick is the one guy, like I said, in him I trust. If he looks at him as a, you know, a possible redemption project, then hell, let's roll the dice there and see what can happen. And if not, let's check out the transfer portal and the rest of the, you know, the uncommitted recruits or what might shake out from the coaching carousel. I do. Well, let me just read the press release quick. Put myself on the spot here. I'm not the best reader out loud. I used to hate the popcorn reading in school, but I'll give it a go here. This is what Coach Pitino said first from the press release from St. John's today. He said, "One of my great coaching memories was having the distinct privilege of coaching against Lou Carnesecca at St. John's, a Hall of Fame coach and historic program that I've always respected. It is surreal to now have this opportunity to bring St. John's back to prominence. I'm honored, humbled, and grateful to Father Shanley, Bill Janitschek, and Mike Craig for making me feel so special." Bill Janitschek, if I'm pronouncing that right, is the board of trustees, the head of the board of trustees, I believe, at St. John's. But just reading that, again, I'm getting chills again because that is an actual press release from St. John's today, March 20th, 2023. They hired Rick Pitino as their basketball coach. Tomorrow, on Tuesday at noon at Madison Square Garden, there'll be an official press conference. Our man Dave will be there in attendance. Hopefully he's getting us the scoops.
Dude, like, and then how happy are you for like Louis to be able to see this? I mean, what is he, 98? You saw the Fox 5 released that little video of him like talking about it. And
dude, man, like, he's sharp as a tack.
Still there, 98 years old and he's smart as can be.
Man, dude, I smiled that whole time. As soon as I saw the headline that he endorsed it, and then like it's only a 10-second video, I would just, if someone would have looked across the room and looked at me, they would have thought like I was staring at a pair of tits or some shit. Like I couldn't stop smiling.
I'm 90% sure I know the exact wall that he was against at one of the Italian restaurants right by campus. I'm pretty sure I know where he was.
Yeah, you locals, you know, you were digging in. That reminds me of people when they were looking at the Cooley interview, when he was doing the interview with the local news before he took the Georgetown job the night before. All the internet sleuths were trying to figure out what hotel room he was in by Georgetown or whatnot. But anyway, we're here to talk about St. John's and Rick Pitino and the future that's ahead. I do have Iona's roster on here. And, you know, St. John's, Rick Pitino does not, you know, they're not limited to these options. Rick Pitino is going to have a bunch of phone calls. But these three kids, just because they're Iona players, doesn't mean they're not good enough to compete in the Big East. And I wouldn't take for granted the fact that they have experience playing under Coach Pitino. So this is just their stat sheet from this year. Those three guys highlighted at the top are clearly their three best players. All three of them have eligibility left. Walter Clayton Jr. is a sophomore. He was the MAC Player of the Year. I've got highlighted all the way to the right. His shooting percentages, those really stood out to me. I saw Iona play three full games and bits and pieces of some others, and Clayton is who stood out to me as their best player. That's not to say Dennis Jenkins and Nelly Jr. Joseph perhaps might not be better fits. Who knows? Clayton is more of the shooter of the group, scorer of the group, a little bit shorter than Dennis, but I had him more as a shooting guard with Dennis more as the point guard. They're kind of interchangeable, both of them capable shooters, both of them capable passers. I think if you're just going off pure talent, I think Clayton's the best of the three. Jenkins might be a little better athlete, so that might translate better to the Big East level. And then Nelly Jr. Joseph is a really quality big man, especially for the MAC level. He's superior athlete, superior size on that level, but not incapable, I feel like, size-wise, to make the transition to the Big East. So I'd say out of those three guys, Pitino will think long and hard about what those guys might do. Of course, they'd have to enter the transfer portal before any of that happens. We all know the behind-the-scenes stuff that happens in college basketball. I'm sure they've had conversations. I'm sure, they might even have their mind made up whether or not they'll follow him or not. But I would highlight those three guys. I would say, there's a good chance at least one of those three guys follows Rick. I'm not sure if you've done any digging yourself, Cole, or seen
Dude,
anything
to
out
your
there.
point about whether a player can, go from a level like the MAAC to the Big East, like I'll tell you what does translate from the lower level to the higher level. Clayton shooting 95% from the free throw line and 43% from three. That translates for sure, especially for a team like us that shot so poorly from the free throw line. Like I'll line that up in a heartbeat if he wants to come. Dude, but like you said, any decision Slick Rick wants to come to, I'm with, dude. Whatever he says, I will not second guess. So
this guy right here,
that guy right there,
that guy. You see that net around his neck,
dude. I've been thinking about this. So, like, what does that first game at the Garden look like? Like, what he comes out of the tunnel wearing that all white suit with a red tie. Like that.
He's got to go with the all white, man. I think he's got to go with the all white. Or he just wears the Louis sweater on day one just to pay homage and really bring a full circle.
Dude, that Mike Rapoli might need to build us a new arena on campus, because that might be what brings the Garden to the ground. Like that place might rumble and shake so much that it finally just the whole thing crumbles and we need a new arena.
Or Vitamin Water Arena, or whatever the hell he's got his pockets in, but they're deep pockets, and that is huge news. We saw what's his name? Man, I'm blanking on his name. The golfer. I know his name. You know who the golfer is on the PGA Tour?
Keegan Bradley, the St. John's.
Keegan Bradley, yeah. I don't know why I forgot his name, but he was shouting us out. And don't forget those golfers, man. They are loaded with cash. That guy probably got upwards of close to $50 million in a purse, and he's not even 40 years old. Those guys play until they're 55, 60 on the Championship Tour. They rack up money. That's a guy you want, on your, in your pockets you can go to supporting this team. There could be a Keegan Bradley Athletic Center at some point in the future. You pair that with all the, future NBA guys that Pitino might bring, and you can see how a investment in this could 10x, 20x down the road. And man,
we were talking about Craig, sort of trying to shout out Craig earlier. Like obviously he's caught a lot of slack on Twitter. From the vocal minority, we like to call them, the people who can yell the loudest, some of which deservedly so. It sounded like the Mike Anderson extension, like the buyout was not favorable, and that was malfeasance on his part, and he rightfully caught some slack for that. But again, like we talked about, the fundraising ability and the fact that now we have Rapoli back in the fold, you get some of those other big guys. I mean, we can throw names like a Mike Francesa or Keegan Bradley. Like you get those big heavy hitters back in the fold. I mean, and why wouldn't they want to be? That's your alma mater. Like your name is attached. Like you're associated with that for life. And now all of a sudden you have a guy like Rick Pitino heading that.
I guarantee the next NBA game Jeff Van Gundy's calling, it's going to be a 5-minute segue on his time with Rick Pitino, how St. John's made the best decision ever. Mark Jackson, the next time he's calling a game, I mean, he still points to the time he played with the Knicks under Rick Pitino as like really igniting his career. He's revered by, almost any significant figure in the game, and I can't wait to hear him wax poetic about Lou and St. John's, and it's awesome. It's awesome. And then, like you said, the schedule is the next most exciting thing, because there's no way in hell we roll out with Merrimack and Louisiana Lafayette or whatever the hell you want to say, six or seven teams that no one cares about.
How many fucking MSG games have we played the last few years? It's been an embarrassment.
We played 4 this past year, right? And one of them
they slowly pulled that back, which I couldn't understand. I mean, that's our biggest recruiting advantage. And they kept pulling that back. I don't know if that's an MSG decision or if that's that was a Mike Craig.
We know they're willing to have college games. They just ask freaking Rutgers or UConn or whoever the hell else wants to pay enough rent. So I mean, if St. John's is going to bring the fans and they're going to bring the opponent, then they might as well load up on them. I'd love to see 3 or 4 out of conference games, even if it's like the mid-tier. You would never see Mike Anderson, even if we were to get like someone like a Dayton, at that level in a non-conference. You'd never see that scheduled at the Garden. Now with Pitino, you get someone at the A-10 level, even like a quality lower opponent. Hell, if you get Iona, obviously, maybe he made a deal with Iona, like, listen, for all the good stuff you did to us, we'll play you two home games for one road game or something like that. We'll give Iona a chance to come to the Garden against St. John's. You wouldn't even have to give them a return home game. You just schedule that game, and they'd love to come to the Garden and play St. John's. And that show you got the balls to have that. I'm sure Pitino's not scared about losing to Iona, and that's good for local basketball. It's good for college basketball. It's good for everybody all around. The only way that the bad thing is if you lose, and all of a sudden with Rick Pitino on the sidelines, who the hell is worried about losing?
Nobody. Dude, and I love New York. I love the St. John's fans. I grew up originally in Pennsylvania, so I'm also fond to a Philly fan base. So I've had sports in my life, my entire life, and I've experienced two of the greater Northeast fan base. New York, for as much as I love our fans and Giants, Jets fans, Mets fans, Yankees fans, I will say that you guys do tend to be front runners. And
you guys? Whoa. You guys?
Well, I got I'm still a Philly man at heart. But what I'm trying to say is that, which is 100% understandable in a city like New York. I think it's very similar almost to like Miami in the respect from a sports fan base and the respect that you have so many things pulling at your attention. There's so much stuff to do in New York City that fans aren't willing to pay. Like, I'm not going to go pay for tickets to go see St. John's at the Garden when they're going to get beat by 30 by UConn. Like, I'm just not going to pay for that. All of a sudden you have that excitement, you have that buzz that Rick Pitino is going to draw. That place isn't going to be 60-40 Villanova fans to St. John's. That's going to be 85-15 St. John's to Villanova fans. And that place is going to fucking rock. Like, we haven't heard it. I mean, I took one semester off in between my undergrad and my grad after Norm Roberts was fired and Steve Lavin was hired. I missed one basketball season, and then that was the best basketball season we've probably had in the last 23 years. And I would get messages from my brother about, Dwight Hardy making a reverse layup against Pitt to, beat them at the Garden. And he's literally like, Madison Square Garden is rocking. That's what he's telling me. And it's just like, I haven't experienced that, and I cannot wait to experience that. And it will happen with Rick Pitino. And it's just, it's a crazy, like you said before, just goosebumps, just thinking about what this is going to be like.
I've only experienced one Madison Square Garden. And shout out to Brandon Gardner. Madison Square Garden win as a St. John's fan, and that was a weekend game against Providence. Season we didn't make. Actually, that was D'Lo's senior year, so we did make the tournament. It was a decently big win. But I can only imagine that if that's a top 25 team against another top 25 team, with serious something on the line, or a Big East championship game, with St. John's in it against UConn or Villanova or Georgetown, Pitino on the sidelines at the Garden. It's going to be all the buzz, all the news. What's the chances that with the NCAA tournament coming to the Garden this week, I believe they play Thursday and Saturday, that Rick Pitino might just be at the Garden and might do a couple interviews?
Dude, well, like you were talking,
what are the chances?
The buzz and like us being back in the news, and like, dude, we were on like the front headline of CNN's app today, like Rick Pitino being hired. I mean, it's just insane. How much are they going to talk about us in all of the Sweet 16 games? Every single Sweet 16 game being played is going to mention Rick Pitino going to St. John's. This is what college basketball wanted. This is what college basketball needed. It's us. It's St. John's.
That's it. You nailed it, Cole. That's what college basketball wanted. That's what college basketball needed. And God damn it, if St. John's fans didn't deserve it, we finally freaking got it, man. We finally freaking got it. And I'll do my best to do a couple more. Usually I do the podcast in the season after the games with all this noise, all this attention. I'm sure I'll do a few deep dives. Maybe we'll go into some recruiting topics. Maybe we'll just, look into the highlights, some of the history of Rick Pitino's career. But Cole, thanks a lot, man. I know it's been a whirlwind. I know this excitement isn't even close to wearing off. Can't wait till the press conference tomorrow. Any closing thoughts, Cole?
Dude, the Slick Rick revenge tour is going to be absolutely brutal. He's pissed off, and he's going to take one of those Gucci loafers and shove it right up the end of his ass. And I'm all for it.
Me too. I'll watch the replay of that over and over and over again. All right, guys. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. Not recapping a game, but perhaps the biggest St. John's news of my lifetime. Unfortunately, for many St. John's fans' lifetime. For Father Shanley, this has been Pat Kane and Cole, the Red Storm Rapid Reaction Podcast. Peace.